Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Hurley Investments Trade Findings and Adjustments of Tuesday evening, June 30th. See a couple more people kind of starting to come in. So I will start off relatively slow, but thank you for those of you who are joining now. Good to see you. Good to be with you this evening. Just as we're coming in here, just want to start off with what's going on this week, right? Kevin talked about much of that last or yesterday. But the theme for the week, and maybe why I'm not necessarily going to be suggesting a trade for a week like this, but maybe suggesting some things you might keep your eyes on that you've been looking to as opportunities to get into. So first, let's just look at a couple of charts. We've got a Baidu chart up here to the left. Now I'm going to give you a minute. Just take a look at this chart. Let me blow it up just a little. What are some things, just general things you notice? And I am looking for something somewhat specific, but let me just go over 2 or 3 charts, and let's see if we can find some patterns. This is Baidu, obviously. Take a look at all of our indicators, some things that we typically talk about. We're going to switch over to Disney. Maybe it might be a good idea let's see if we can let's just take a little screenshot that way. We can just throw it on there. There's Baidu. Another one is, let's look at Disney. Oops. A little screenshot of Disney. And what else? Maybe Visa. That's not the best example. This is the S&P. Let's see, what else could I look up? Well, this one's not bad. I'll throw this up here. All right. So something that I'm going to try and highlight. This obviously doesn't work with everything out there, but a few of these, and I'm not seeing any comments or questions, but a few of these are on the lower end of their volume. So check this out. Pretty low volume on Baidu. We'll keep that drawing right there. Somewhat low, and you can see it the last week or week and a half volume coming down there on Disney. As I mentioned, it's not as good of an example, but certainly on the lower side of volume on Visa. Let's look at Facebook. That's definitely not the case on Facebook. Boeing, not really the case on Boeing. I would expect more down in this range to say it's a low volume. How about the case of, what else was I thinking about? How about Target? Target's a good one for the other argument of low volume. So obviously there's some stocks that have moved on headlines like Facebook, Boeing, that kind of don't fit in that narrative, and as I just said, the reason why is because of news and headlines. Otherwise, you can kind of see that really we're kind of more on a lower volume week. Why is that? Why would you guys expect to see somewhat of a lower volume week this week? I'd have mentioned a death cross on Baidu and Disney, and low volume because of holiday in Canada and USA. That second part is exactly what I was thinking, Ida. Yes, we've got a holiday coming up. We got Friday the market is off, and I would expect obviously big institutional money is out of the market this week. Which means some stocks might not be so low volume because there's more volatility. Volatility on obviously those other ones I showed you, the Boeing and the Facebooks that have headline news driven stuff, right? But I'll say not necessarily something we should pay attention to. Another note is we had they call it the quadruple witching. You have end of options expiration, right? We have end of the month this week today. We've got end of the quarter. So those all start to add up, and we'd expect some rebalancing, stuff getting sold off, especially from maybe end of last week, this week. And well, this week more of institutional money out for vacation, and a buying back in is what I'd expect for Monday next week. Let me spell that right. Ida, to get back to your death cross, that is an interesting thing to observe. Let me go back to, what did I have up? I'll just put them up here since I've put them in. Baidu's, I would say, trying to get on the other side of that death cross and cross to the upside, right? Pretty much everything has a death cross. Here's our death cross on Visa. You can even see Target. Where's Facebook? I think Facebook has come back above it as well. Yep, back above it. So yes, great observation, but reason I'm ignoring that is pretty much everything has either a death cross and then a cross back of the 50-day back above the 200, or it's working its way back there, right? So, which means, no, I don't have a trade to say, hey, do this, other than to say, hey, keep your eye on some of the things we've been talking about. Namely, Boeing leaps when, as Kevin has talked about, hey, wait for a day. If it's down tomorrow, wait another day. until we get an update. He discussed this at length last Thursday. Maybe it was Tuesday, I believe. He talked about Apple, Boeing. He might have reiterated that yesterday. Just on the idea that, hey, we can get this, when you talked about Boeing leaps, $10 cheaper than we were originally back in this area. Hey, hold off until we get, obviously if tomorrow's a down day, let's hold off. Wait a little bit. Anyways, he reiterated it. We've had, Boeing's just been kind of crazy, right? So why would you look at Boeing again if this is something you haven't gotten into? Maybe you did wait and he said, Kevin said, hey, look at this again for our leap position. We looked at the June 22 leaps, or I think actually the September 22 leaps is one of the ones he suggested. There was also the January 2022 leaps, I believe, at 275. Were the ones that we frequently talked about. So if you got into that yesterday, seeing this up day, or maybe you saw it on this up day, or maybe you were still waiting, there's still the chance that maybe you can leg into this. So the idea being that if there's continued bad headlines like what happened today with Norwegian Air canceling 90 of their 737 MAX orders, and we get a bit of a down day, or it continues to just drift down, you can look at legging in now and getting another leg in towards the 50-day. But as you've probably noticed with this one is that it's really all we're focused on and waiting for is the 737 MAX approval by the FAA. Big jump yesterday because of that news that they were doing test flights, but really over the next 4 to 8 weeks, somewhere in there. The hope is, at least from the market, is that they'll finally get a approval by the FAA. And when that happens, you can expect some big movement to the upside. So for the near term though, if you're looking at that, I would suggest again and reiterate a leg in, because we don't know exactly when that news is going to come. So go back over Facebook. Any questions on that? Has anybody gotten into Boeing, and are there any thoughts or comments there before I move on? Facebook, let's see, Friday had news of a bunch of companies that were boycotting Facebook, and even a couple more that have come out yesterday and today, boycotting Facebook by not purchasing ads on the Facebook site. Basically wanting to pressure Facebook into getting rid of hate speech, as those companies are trying to garner support from customers politically. So that was the big sell-off. Facebook bounced back, did hold that 50-day, which is cool. Big bounce back up. I would see that as an opportunity, at least on the feeling from the market that Facebook will cave to some degree and try to get rid of hate speech. They banned a bunch of group pages on Facebook that they saw as contributing to hate speech in their whatever their definition is of that. So that kind of helped with that coming back up. I think you have to wonder if then they get the other side of the spectrum, which is Trump calling them out on trying to control speech, free speech, which he's been critical of them on. And we get more of the damned if you do, damned if you don't that Facebook has had to deal with for quite some time. But as far as I'm concerned, that looks like a very positive jump up. Near term to look at, seeing if it gets back up to that range, between this range from 227 where it is, ended up to day where we could see it head back up to the 244 level. Questions on Facebook? Before I go to Target, I wanted to look at SWBI, Smith & Wesson. And I know Kevin has talked a little bit about this one and issued a trade on both a covered call through earnings and I think he did a strangle. So that one after earnings looking good. I'm just really going to say that. It also helps with any volatility coming up from, at least due to our wonderful political climate and COVID unsurety. Is that a word? That tends to push this stock up for obvious reasons. It's kind of become this little interesting defensive play. More gun sales as a result of our climate, right? Target. I had mentioned this range here before. Great opportunity if you had gotten another point down here on the lower end of the range, really 116, maybe 117, to look to be out around you could actually be out or at least leg out on a target trade, on a bullish target trade on the way back up to 124, and keep one on to see if it gets back up to 127. I think that any style of or degree of reopening is going to probably help target, but I would be looking at it around and not through their earnings. So looking at their earnings, let me just take a double check here. August 19th. So got plenty of time to trade that range. Costco, I mentioned last time in my webinar that I like the look of Target better than Costco, but let's look at Costco. Any thoughts, questions on Target? Throw those in anytime. I'm going to go ahead and go on to Costco. Really good looking bounce off of this 298, 300-ish level that I like. Another one that's kind of on that lower volume. So I don't know that we're really going to see it take off. At this point, I would rather see it get above a 50 and this 304.94 pivot point if you're looking at getting into something with Costco. Just as a reminder, the way that I have been trading Costco, because I have been kind of more trading the Costco sideways range, leaps, having some on when it gets down to these levels and taking some off as it gets up towards the 310 level. So that's how I would look at it. But for something like this, where you're not really seeing it get above a 50-day, it might be one that is just going to be kind of better to wait till a buy-in on Monday to see where it goes. Guys, are there any other thoughts or questions? I'm kind of just I'm just trying to go over some of the things I regularly talk about, and just give you an idea of what I'm looking at, and if you're looking to do something, where I would do it and when. If you already have something on any of these, again, to give you an idea of where I would look to in the short term, look to get out of them. I think you all know pretty well now what our long-term thoughts are. So if there's no other questions, guys, I'll wait just a couple seconds here. Thanks for joining me. As always, I appreciate it. Just as a word of caution for this week, it's kind of a week to ignore. So it might be a little volatile from retail trading. Big money's out, and take everything with a huge grain of salt. and look towards Monday, especially Thursday, where we'll see, should see fairly low volume, especially on that day, and a big buy-in on Monday. All right, guys, thank you so much. I will look forward to seeing you next time. And just as a reminder, we have next week, Kevin and I are taking a little vacation break from our webinars, and I believe he was planning on putting out a couple recorded ones, but I'm off the top of my head, I can't remember. If that's the case, check those out. If not, not a big deal. We need a break from time to time. So just as a reminder for next week. Thank you guys for joining us. I look forward to talking to you next time. Take care.